Hey everyone, welcome to Just In My Opinion. Today I'm going to be reviewing Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. Before I dive into the review, I just want to lay out how I'm going to be looking at this game. For me, I like to review games in a vacuum. I know that Bloodstained Curse of the Moon and Ritual of the Night share common lore. That doesn't matter to me. If you loved Bloodstained Curse of the Moon and you loved the lore in that game, that may make Ritual of the Night more enjoyable for you. However, I'm going to evaluate this game on its own merit and nothing else. So, with that said, I'm going to make my only direct comparisons and then get on with the review. Ritual of the Night is an action RPG, which you may even call a metroidvania. Coincidentally, Ritual of the Night was brought to life by a former assistant director of Symphony of the Night, the game which more or less defined that term to begin with, and producer of many Castlevania games later on. Curse of the Moon, and I promise this is the last time I'm going to mention it, was a home run. Looking back on it, I struggled to find any single thing to really complain about. For me, it was a masterpiece. So, coming into Ritual of the Night, there are huge expectations. Will it live up to Curse of the Moon, or will it swing and miss? I hate suspense, so I'm just going to answer that right away. Ritual of the Night was a fantastic game. However, unlike Curse of the Moon, it wasn't without flaws. In fact, I'd say Ritual of the Night was riddled with flaws. Nothing huge, nothing that ruined my experience, it's just not a perfect game. Before I wrote this review, I made sure that I completed the game almost entirely. I played through the PC version of the game and it took me roughly 12 hours to complete the game. When I say complete, I mean more or less 100% of the map. In actuality, I finished 99% of the map. But to the best of my knowledge, I wound up with the complete ending while also experiencing some alternate endings along the way. When I played through the game, there also weren't any guides that I could reference, so it was 12 hours from start to completion without any external help. This is also entirely on normal mode, since the game begins by locking off other difficulties. You can unlock other difficulties if you want to, but for the average player that just wants to jump into the game, you're limited to normal mode. Unfortunately, on my normal mode playthrough, the game itself felt way too easy. For me, one of the defining factors of a metroidvania game are memorable and exciting boss fights. In Ritual of the Night, I'm pretty sure I cleared every fight in 1 or 2 attempts, and I absolutely felt zero challenge going through this game initially, from a combat perspective. This includes the final fight, which was largely forgettable and honestly didn't even feel like it fit in the game. That's my biggest complaint about the game in general. I felt like almost everything about Ritual of the Night was forgettable. I played this game the day before writing this review. I genuinely can't remember 3/4 of the bosses I fought. Conversely, if I think back on games like Symphony of the Night, it's been around 20 years since I played it, and I still remember at least half of the fights in that game. However, I'll say this now. While Ritual of the Night may not be as memorable of a game for me, that doesn't mean I didn't completely and utterly enjoy my playthrough of the game. Everything about Ritual of the Night made me feel nostalgic. Everything about the game felt like it was an incredibly well-made spiritual successor to games like Symphony of the Night. Now, on my quest to completion, the game generally felt fair. You progress through the game, you learn new abilities, and put those abilities to use to access parts of the map you couldn't previously access. For the most part, this is done through defeating bosses and acquiring their abilities. In some cases, though, this is also done from killing regular enemies and acquiring their abilities. Throughout Ritual of the Night, whenever you kill a regular enemy, you have a chance of acquiring a shard. These shards grant your character abilities that are generally related to the enemies you acquired the shard from. You can equip one type of shard at a time. there are different types of shards. Some essentially act as magic attacks that drain your mana each time you use them. Others have passive effects. And finally, some are familiars, which are basically just companions that follow you around and can themselves level up as well. Some of these abilities are extremely powerful, and others are not really worth having. And as I mentioned earlier, there may also be one or two that are directly tied to progressing through the game. This was actually the most cryptic part of the game for me. At a certain point, you defeat all of the bosses available, and you're left sort of wondering where to go and what to do. There isn't always clear guidance. Sometimes you can get a hint or two from NPCs, but you can also accidentally skip these hints and just be left rubbing your head as you circle the map 3 or 4 times, trying to figure out exactly what it is that you missed. There were 2 occasions where I spent about an hour just trying to figure out what to do next. Eventually, I lucked out and got there, and after reading up about the game after the fact, it seems like there were hints which I happened to miss, because I went through dialogues a little too quickly. Which kinda sucks, because for the most part, dialogue seemed useless, but there were a few snippets here and there that actually did matter, and generally were never repeated. So, fair warning. Otherwise, this game is everything I expected it to be. I loved the diversity of weapons and abilities. Eventually, I settled into a certain class of weapon and a subgroup of magic to use in every single fight, but there is a lot of flexibility for different playstyles as well. Additionally, there is a crafting system that can give you access to strong items if you find the materials to make them, or that allows you to cook food which can provide stat buffs the first time you eat the food. For the most part, I skipped crafting altogether, since it seemed like it was more effort than the rewards were worth. I acquired strong items just by exploring and playing the game. I generally didn't acquire powerful crafting materials at the same rate, so crafting became a system to provide me with more healing items than it did anything else. In higher difficulties, this may change, but on my initial playthrough, crafting seemed largely meaningless. There are also side quests available that may have you hunt down items, food, or kill a certain number of enemies. It was a nice passive thing to do, but I felt no need to actually go out and complete every challenge. I also encountered a few major bugs that required me to reload my game, the most notable being attacking with a heavy weapon in water. It often led to being stuck in a swinging animation that I couldn't cancel or escape out of. Whenever this happened, I had to reload the game, and that was pretty much it. I'm sure these problems will be resolved pretty quickly, just be cautious with wielding heavy weapons in water. And that's really it. Overall, I loved this game. Exploration, combat, everything felt fluid and well designed. There were so many secrets, so many hidden items, and you're really rewarded for thinking outside of the box. There is a huge amount of depth to this game. Yeah, I wish some things in the main line of events had been a little bit more clear, but it didn't ruin my experience in any way. It's also worth noting that I did try out the other difficulties after playing through normal, and they are without a doubt much more challenging, pretty much immediately. So if you want a challenge, it exists, but it probably won't come from the first difficulty available. Personally, I won't be going back to play other difficulties. It's a personal thing. I don't usually feel the need to replay a game unless it was grossly captivating in some way. However, there is replayability, and that will likely only increase as additional DLC with more difficulty modes and playable characters is freely released. I think it's definitely worth taking a look at. It's not Symphony of the Night, but it's still pretty damn good. And don't forget, this is just in my opinion. If you feel like I left something out, disagree, or just want to suggest something else for me to review, leave a comment. I've been missing for a week or two, but I'm mostly back now and will be reviewing at least one game every week, usually more. So if you enjoyed this, feel free to subscribe to find out what I have to say about other upcoming games. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.